Welcome back, listeners, to another episode. Yeah, I said it. And you're checking out the program as we hit YouTube right now. You're checking out the program on January 9th, 2020. Want to wish everybody out there a happy new year. We're coming on pretty late in the West Coast. Hopefully, if you wake up in the morning, you'll get this program. If you're on the East Coast, hopefully you'll get a notification about the program. We're giving you two for the price of one. Got a pretty busy weekend coming up, celebrating my daughter's debutante ball that'll be coming up this weekend. Yes, your boy will be doing the waltz. So we are doing the debutante ball, presenting my daughter to society. If you guys are from the South or from the East Coast, you guys are familiar with cotillions and botillions, and it's a presentation of young women to society. It's an old tradition. So, um, want to send my best to all the debutantes and all the escorts. And we'll be waltzing and doing our thing in gloves and in tails this weekend. So I want to give you guys a show this evening on Thursday. It'll be a treat for you guys again on the East Coast when you see it in the morning. And also, I think Jeff's going to put it out for the podcast feed in the morning as well. I want to give a big shout out to Jeff Hartman. Also want to give a big shout out to Dave Schofield. And who's bad? Hashtag Mr. 2AM, Brian Anthony Davis. Want to commend those guys for taking on a very difficult topic in the Steelers preview in their show earlier today when they discussed the Rooney Rule. The Rooney Rule is a very delicate topic, one that's difficult to talk about, and I think those guys did a great job. I'm going to touch upon that a little bit in this show, but the title of this program is Yeah, I Said It. The salary cap will prevent the Steelers from winning a Super Bowl in 2020. And I could have titled it a little bit different. It's not the salary cap per se, it's the Steelers' lack of cap space. Now, according to overthecap.com, I want to give a big shout out to those guys, and also want to always give a big shout to my guy, Ian Whetstone, my salary cap sensei. Big up to him. The Steelers currently, and let me just read the number so I have it exactly. They have roughly 4.8 million in cap space available in 2020. Now, when you add little cap space and a lot of needs, what that typically does not equal is a Super Bowl, unfortunately. And the football gods are cruel because over the last several seasons, when they had Mr. Butt Naked and Rob, aka Le'Veon Bell, they had Mr. Third and Fifth, aka Antonio Brown, etc., etc. They had a wealth of skill players. They had a younger Marquise Pouncey, a younger Ramon Foster, a younger David DeCastro. Dare I say, they were loaded on the offensive side of the ball. You throw Juju in that mix, Martavis Bryant, excuse me. They were loaded on the offensive side of football to where the narrative about this football team every year was, can they average 30 points per season? Dare I say, that's gone. Now, we all know that Ben Roethlisberger suffered a season ending elbow injury, one of which the Pittsburgh Steelers have never disclosed as to what it is in particular. You had Devlin Doug Hodges, hence the camo cap. You had Mason Rudolph, who has been deemed the number 2 quarterback next year in 2020. So, needless to say, the offense struggled. But the football gods are cruel. The offense struggles, but now the defense is elite. Another season of 50 plus sacks. They lead the NFL in interceptions and in turnovers, top 5 in plus minus. And dare I say, I can't remember a team, and I'm sure somebody on the live chat can illustrate this or give me the stat. I can't remember a team that led the NFL in sacks and in turnovers that did not make the playoffs. If there has been a team that has done that, there hasn't been many. And typically, when you get sacks and you get turnovers, you get multiple possessions, you stop teams, and you're going to get an opportunity to score a lot of points. But even with all of that, the Steelers, can only average, around 18 points per game. So that's why the football gods are cruel. You get an elite defense, something which they had been looking for years, to couple with that Ben Roethlisberger led offense, and they just never jived at the same time. You never got that elite defense to mix with that elite offense. They just never jived. And that's why football is so unfair, because now that the Steelers have an elite defensive unit, that issue of a lack of cap space is rearing its head. And dare I say, with only $4.8 million in cap space, there are some significant issues, and that's going to be a significant impediment for the Steelers in 2020 as they try to get a Super Bowl, their seventh, which would be the most. Let me go through some of the unrestricted free agents and the restricted free agents that the Steelers will have to deal with in this season coming up in 2020. You've got Bud Dupree, you've got Ryan Shazier, and we'll talk about that. Me and Jeff will probably bring that up. We'll talk about that because that's interesting in terms of what the Steelers are going to do with Ryan Shazier. I suspect that they'll bring him on as a coach. He'll come completely off the books, and that's how they'll deal with it. B.J. Finney, center guard, versatile backup, Artie Burns, Sean Davis, L.T. Walton, Javon Hargrave, Nick Vannett. The restricted free agents are Cameron Kennedy, Zach Banner, Mike Hilton, Jordan Dangerfield, Matt Filer. Tyler Manikavich is also an unrestricted free agent. Marcus Allen is an ERFA. That's an exclusive rights free agent. J.C. Hanzor is exclusive rights free agent. And Levon Hooks is an exclusive rights free agent. The biggest name and the biggest priority on that list is Bud Dupree. Now, I've read at different sites that it's going to require, if they franchise him, roughly about 17 million. We'll just kind of round it off so you just get a round number. So it's pretty easy to digest and to ascertain what's going on. Now, I know that the cap is going up, but they're still going to have significant issues. When you only have roughly 4.8 million in cap space left, you don't have a lot of cap space. And that is going to hamper them in terms of what they're going to do. Now, when you look at the free agents, in my opinion, Bud Dupree and the gravedigger, Javon Hargrave, are 1 and 1A in terms of free agents that I think that they need to retain, because the strength of this football team is on the defensive side of football. You also got Mike Hilton. You also got B.J. Finney. I think also Tyler Manikavich is a guy that you want to maintain. So how do you get that space? And because they're up against it in terms of the cap, they're going to have to cut people. Now, we've talked about it on the show that there are some names that really stand out in terms of guys that you think are going to get potentially waived. And so when you waive a player, the immediate question is, what are you going to do to replace that production? So when you look at their cap situation, a name that jumps out is Mark Barron and his, cap number of $8.125 million. You would get a cap savings if they cut him pre-June 1st. And the reason why they might have to do that pre-June 1st would be if you sign Bud Dupree to a tag, you have to have that cap space. So when you have a cap number of like 8.125, and you have to note that that's not necessarily going to be the savings. But a Vance McDonald is also a player that you think could get waived. And Anthony Chickalo is a player that could get waived. A Ramon Foster is a player that could get waived. I mean, these are just obvious names of guys that could get waived to create the cap space necessary to bring on a Bud Dupree and giving their cap space. And that's why I'm saying that the lack of salary cap, not the salary cap in and of itself per se, but the Steelers' lack of cap space is going to severely hinder them in winning a Super Bowl. Because when you've got your defense like it is, you want to bring back Bud Dupree. You want to bring back Hargrave. You want to put those guys with the healthy Stephon Tuitt to see just where this unit is going to be next year. Can you guys imagine, if you're listening to the program and on the live chat, how good would this defense have been if they had Hargrave and Tuitt and Cam Hayward? And congratulations to Cam Hayward. Congratulations to TJ Watt as well as Minkah Fitzpatrick. I believe those three gentlemen were named to the Sporting News All-Pro team. They were also named to the AP All-Pro team. So congratulations to those gentlemen. So just imagine, you got Tuitt, you got Hargrave, you got Dupree, you got TJ Watt, and you bring back that defense pretty much intact next year, then you're ready to roll if you bring back a somewhat healthy Ben Roethlisberger, who maybe can be carried a little bit by his defense as he warms to the task. But when you have to make some of the cuts that they're going to have to make, you lose Mark Barron, you lose Ramon Foster, you lose Chickalo, you lose Vance McDonald. That creates holes. And like I said at the top of the program, lack of cap space plus a lot of needs equals not a Super Bowl. That doesn't equal a Super Bowl. So, and to Yinzer Life 77, and Yinzer Life wrote, Mark Barron's contract is guaranteed. 2 years, $12 million and $5.75 million signing bonus. Cutting Barron will save zero in salary cap space. And that's absolutely not correct. First of all, when it comes to contracts, very few contracts in the National Football League are 100% guaranteed against will and skill. So will is the physical part of it, and skill is if you lack skill, if your skill diminishes. So very few contracts are guaranteed against both, which constitutes a 100% guaranteed contract. Now, according to Over the Cap, if they were to waive Mark Barron pre-June 1st, their cap savings would be $5.25 million, and the dead money charge that they would absorb would be his prorated signing bonus, which would be $2.875 million. And that breaks down to, so when you cut a player, you save their salary that you owe them and any bonuses that you would have to pay them once they were on the roster. His base salary is $4.5 million, and his roster bonus is $750K. Now, that's a pre-June 1st. Now, in a trade, if they were to trade Barron, the numbers are the same. And of course, if they would restructure them, There would be different terms there. But there is cap savings if they cut Mark Barron. And I urge you guys to go to overthecap.com and just hit the Pittsburgh Steelers icon, and you'll get all of those numbers there. I mean, one thing we do when we're giving you cap numbers, or at least when I give you cap numbers, is I'm going to always quote Over the Cap. Over the Cap is the best site. Overthecap.com is the best site for salary cap numbers. They're right at your fingertips. Let me jump into this live chat question from Joel Coleman. And thank you for the $2.99, Joel. Is Ben a restructure and or Cam extension viable? When you look at the numbers, and not to just get into the minutia, the problem with Ben Roethlisberger's contract is there's not many years left to really push it forward. And I don't want to get into the specifics, but there's an issue with the 30% rule that really limits teams in the last year of the salary cap in terms of using mechanisms that they normally could do to create extensions. I don't think that an extension is an option for Ben Roethlisberger given his age, his injury history, and the limited amount of years left on his contract. So when you look at Ben's contract, Ben only has 2 years remaining, 2020 and 2021. So there's not a lot of years to push out to get savings. So there's not a lot of savings there. So, but thank you with that question, Joel Coleman. So, when you look at it, and that's the unfair part about it, is that right when the Steelers get built to really compete from a defensive perspective, their lack of cap space is going to make it very hard to keep two key cogs of their defense. And in a perfect world, as Steeler fans, we would love for them to have Bud Dupree and Javon Hargrave. I mean, we would love to have both of those guys back, because if you have both of those guys, that defense remains elite. And with the uncertainty of where Ben Roethlisberger is going to be from a physical standpoint, we don't know what this offense is going to look like, because the offense already has holes. No Ramon Foster. If you have to cut Ramon Foster because of a lack of cap space, because you have to get some cap space to bring back Bud Dupree, now there's a reshuffling on an offensive line that was largely inconsistent last year. So this lack of salary cap space has major ramifications on both sides of the football. Presumably, I think they will do what is necessary to bring back Bud Dupree. You have bookend outside linebackers, which, they're just a dominant pair. You keep those guys together. You do what you can to bring back Mike Hilton and BJ Finney. However, I think bringing back BJ Finney is going to be difficult because, like Kelvin Beachum, BJ Finney is going to get value on the market. So I think the two pieces, when you look at the free agents in terms of their defense, they're going to have to try to bring back Bud Dupree. They're going to have to waive guys to create the space to do that. I think they're also going to have to bring back Mike Hilton as well, because I like the combination of Mike Hilton and Cam Sutton. As a restricted free agent, they are in pretty much complete control when it comes to that situation. They will be able to bring him back. But again, because of a lack of cap space, they have to waive people, in my opinion, to get the cap space. And again, little cap space plus a lot of needs will prevent the Steelers from winning a Super Bowl, in my opinion, next year. Or the only thing that you could circumvent that, in my opinion, is you have to draft really well. You have to try to hit on a diamond in the rough somewhere to try to offset what you may lose. So you're talking about a Tyler Manikavich. If you lose that guy, it really compromises your special teams. Matt Filer, you've got to offer him a deal. You need to bring back Matt Filer. That's another key cog when you're talking about free agents and you're talking about salary cap space and you're talking about a lack of salary cap space and just how much that may impact you as a football team. They have to bring back Bud Dupree, in my opinion. They have to bring back Hilton. They have to bring back Filer. You can't lose Filer or BJ Finney. So again, this lack of cap space, in my opinion, is going to severely impact their ability to win a Super Bowl in 2020. But let me go back to the live chat and let's go through some of your questions. Mike also asked, how long you think Ben has been dealing with a bad elbow? I would say 2 seasons. A ton of MLB pitchers have had elbow surgery and thrown harder. What's your take? I wouldn't be surprised. I wouldn't be surprised if he's been managing it and they've probably been building in, his lack of practice time on Wednesdays. They've been trying to manage his arm. I mean, if you think about a quarterback has made, Ben Roethlisberger has been throwing a football in high school since he was 14 years old. He's like 37, 38 years old. That's 24 years of throwing a football. That's thousands of throws. His elbow is torqued and tweaked. I'm sure all these guys that are late in their careers, like Tom Brady, like Phillip Rivers, Eli Manning, that those guys are all on the verge of an elbow ligament or tendon snapping. But again, we don't know the severity of this injury, but I'm not surprised that more of those guys don't have issues with their arms. They throw the ball a ton, and that's where the phrase kind of camp arm, that's what it means. You bring in a body for a camp arm so you can take throws off of a veteran quarterback because you only have so many throws. I mean, I played baseball for years and my arm is shot. I mean, I haven't thrown a baseball in years. I don't have any arm strength. My arm is shot. I can only imagine Ben Roethlisberger and just how much strain and wear and tear that he's put on his arm. Let me jump into a couple more questions, or I'm going to wait. Let me jump into a question from Joel Coleman. Hey, Lance, do you think safety depth is a big priority for the draft? I don't want to get into draft stuff, but I think the priority for the draft is on the offensive side of football. I think Ben, and I think the overall skill positions, and I think Ben is going to really need some help in terms of skill positions. I think they need a tight end, and I think they need a running back. Let me jump into another topic that I wanted to discuss, and I wanted to commend those guys again for tackling the Rooney Rule, and I want to commend our owner. Mr. Rooney, for coming up for the rule, for creating a mechanism for minority candidates to get interviews in the process. And, the reason why the Rooney Rule exists is that, there's been an issue in hiring minority coaches and coaches of color. And I think there's also an issue on the coordinator level, which I think also impacts minority coaches from getting opportunities or becoming head coaches. Now, I'm not sure if the number is correct, but I know there's been less than 20 individual minority head coaches. And I'm not talking about guys that get multiple jobs like a Tony Dungy. But I think if you line up the names, I'm pretty sure that it's been less than 20 over the course of the 100 years in the National Football League. That suggests that there is an issue, that there is an opportunity issue. And that's why the Rooney Rule was created, because there are qualified minority coaches that just aren't getting opportunities. Now, I don't know, and I don't want to argue how effective the Rooney Rule has been, but I will say this, that when a Joe Judge gets the head coaching job of the New York Giants, there's an issue for me. You're talking about a guy that's never coached, that's never been a coordinator, and of course, Harbaugh had the experience of being a special teams coordinator and becoming the head coach of the dreaded and hated Ravens. But when a Joe Judge can become the head coach of the National Football Giants, the New York Football Giants, whatever it is, however they say it, I don't know if it's an issue is the right word, but that lack of opportunity, dare I say, may not be afforded to a minority coach to coach a signature franchise like the New York Football Giants. So I think the Rooney Rule has had a positive effect. I think it brings minority coaches into the fold. It gets them in front of ownership. But I'm not sure how you change it, because ownership is a privilege, in my opinion. If you spend $1 billion on a team, best believe if I did, I'd do exactly what I wanted to do. I would absolutely do what I wanted to do in terms of hiring. You could not tell me who I had to hire. And I don't think that's what the Rooney Rule does. The point is, it's trying to bring minority candidates into that pool to allow them to get opportunities at these jobs and wow these owners. Because I think owners at times have a viewpoint of what they think a coach looks like and who the coach should be. And there's also just trees and this, that. If you're in this tree, if you're that in that tree, so Joe Judge was absolutely helped by the fact that he was in Bill Belichick's coaching tree. So I think some of the issue with minority coaches will resolve itself as you get more minority coaches on staffs. So some of that has to change, and I think that will change and provide minority coaches some more opportunities. I think the Rooney Rule is a start. I don't think it's a solution, but this is a difficult issue because, like my boy John Davis said, ownership it brings privilege. I mean, if you invest over $1 billion on a franchise, by golly, you are going to hire the guy that you want to hire. I mean, look at Tepper. I think his last name is Tepper, was a former minority owner of the Pittsburgh Steelers down in Carolina. And he hired Matt Rule to a 7-year, $60 million deal. Matt Rule has never coached the NFL, and he's making more money than Mike Tomlin, who has a Super Bowl victory. He's coached for over 10 years and has one of the highest winning percentages in the National Football League and never had a losing season. And he's making more. I'm just saying, there's room to go. And hopefully, this is not a topic that will be discussed, but it should be discussed because this is the 100th year of the National Football League. And opportunities for minority coaches are starting to dry up. Let me jump into the group chat. I know you guys have something to say about that. Let me jump into comment from Yinzer Life. Let me hit this comment by BSG74. Would you bring in a veteran quarterback to back up Ben? Absolutely. Here's the issue, though. It's what I talked about at the top of the show. The salary cap will prevent the Steelers from winning a Super Bowl. More specifically, the lack of cap space. The Steelers absolutely got burned by how they managed their quarterback position. There is no way that the Steelers can convince me that they're competing for a championship if they don't, at minimum, have a veteran quarterback as the number 3. If you bring in another young quarterback behind Mason Rudolph, man, y'all can just rinse, repeat, turn off the channel. They ain't winning no Super Bowl because that ain't going to work again. That will not work again. But a lack of cap space prevents them from going out to get this guy because they have to address some other needs that are going to appear because of the cuts they have to make to then sign Bud Dupree. Let me jump into a comment from Yinzer Life. He said the number of minority candidates should be raised from 1 to at least 2 for HC via the Rooney Rule, and then the rule should further exist for the OC and DC positions. He brings up a good point because I'm not sure if there's been a minority coach that did not ascend to an HC position from being a coordinator. And I think one of the biggest difficulties for minority coaches becoming head coaches is that most of the guys are DCs. And so you'll get this wave of this OC that's the flavor of the month, like Sean McVay, and then owners will get enamored with that flavor and then just hire guys off of his tree, but all those guys are OCs. So I think, it's weird because I think offensive coordinators, I think unfairly are seen as the more cerebral side of the ball. But I would disagree totally about that because I think it's harder to be a DC because you're reacting. You're reacting to everything that an offense is doing. So I would agree with Yinzer Life is maybe you increase it from 1 interview to 2 to 3 interviews. Bring more people into the pool. I think that's a great idea by Yinzer Life, is that you keep the basis and the premise of it around, but you make it more inclusive. You bring more minority candidates into the pool. So the requirement isn't just an interview of 1 minority candidate. It's multiple minority candidates. I think that'd be a good start. I talked about incentivizing because I like to incentivize behavior. I don't like to be penal. I like to incentivize behavior. I was thinking maybe if you hired, a minority head coach, maybe you got some cap space. Maybe you got a pick. I'm not sure. Those were just ideas that I, threw out in my head. Maybe for the Steelers, when they hired Mike Tomlin, they got $5 million in cap space. I don't know. I don't want to try to do it like that because that feels kind of weird that you're associating like a value to a coach, like they're kind of property. That feels kind of weird, but some sort of incentive. But the best idea that I've heard right so far has been from Yinzer Life. Increase the number of interviews. Let me jump into a comment from Steelers 63. Most NFL teams are giving courtesy interviews to minority coaches and never planning on hiring any candidates. Well, maybe, and I don't disagree with that. Yinzer Life, I think, brings up a good point. You go from 1 to about 4, or maybe 1 to 5. At least allow yourself to be wild. I mean, ultimately, you're going to have more minority owners to change the status quo. And I think the owner of Jacksonville, Khan, I think is the only minority owner. I think it's the only minority owner. So, I think that's an issue. I'm not going to say it's plaguing the league, but that's an issue that the league is going to have to address because you want, in terms of upper management, meaning coaches and GMs, you want it to be representative of, to reflect the players who play because it does give a perception that, you know, are minority guys only qualified to play and not manage and or coach? So it can give off the bad perception. So, we'll see how this goes. Awesome stuff as where does TP or TB12 end up? I hate talking about that guy, but he's going to be a Patriot. He's going to be a Patriot. Um, Haas H responded, guys like Eric Bieniemy are just being used and it's hurting his future. And honestly, it's embarrassing for him. I think he's being used to a certain extent. But I think interviewing for an opportunity is never a bad deal. Inevitably, minority candidates have to get in front of ownership. And ownership is a small set of owners. There's 32 owners. Even if you don't get a job, if you impress the correct owner or the right owner, word of mouth travels. And when you come around for that next round of hires, you may get a better opportunity. Let me jump into the playoff picks. Black Steel said, did the controversy with Kaepernick hurt black coach opportunities? No. I mean, when you only had like 15 guys in a 100-year history become, black head coaches, no. Nothing Kaepernick could do could hurt that. It's just the NFL. It's the NFL and the landscape of the NFL, that the NFL has not always been an equal level playing field. I mean, you've had 15 guys in 100 years. So no, the NFL, the ownership club has often been called the good old boys club, and that exists. That has hampered minority candidacy and head coaching. That's more of an issue in terms that's impacting minority coaches, than Colin Kaepernick. And a great story is Mike Tomlin. Mike Tomlin wasn't the guy that was, first in the clubhouse. He got an opportunity. He did the interview, super prepared, wowed them. The rest is history. The Steelers did a slam dunk job in terms of hiring a coach. What I would urge NFL owners, if there's any owner listening to the show, I doubt it. And I want to thank all of you guys for listening in the live chat. Allow yourself to be wild. Just allow yourself to be wild. That's it. That's all. Allow yourself to be wild. And if you do, you will likely hire the best candidate. Don't go in with the preconceived notion of a guy that you want to hire and you're just going through the motions. Owners, you have to allow yourself to be wild. You have to go into the process with an open mind and allow yourself to be surprised. And then you will find the candidate that is probably best. And so Mike O'Malley is probably correct. Dallas was required to interview a minority candidate and knew they weren't hiring Lewis. Well, I don't know if they didn't know that they weren't hiring Lewis, but again, Marvin Lewis has to interview for the job. Maybe he would have wowed Jerry and, but after being in Cincinnati, I wouldn't wish Dallas on anybody. Although I think that hire was a solid hire. Before we get out of here, I want to jump into the playoffs this weekend, and I'm interested in what you guys. I'm interested in your picks. So I want to throw this out there. We're going to jump into the AFC side. I want to jump into the first game, and that's Ravens versus Titans. I want to get your guys' thoughts in the live chat of who you guys are going to think is going to win that game. The second game, I won't give you my thoughts, but I just want to list the game. So I want to get you guys going in the live chat so you can give me your thoughts on the game. Chiefs versus Texans. That's the AFC side. The NFC side is Packers versus Seahawks and 49ers versus Vikings. That Ravens-Titans game, I think, is going to be, and I'm going to go old school. I'm going to get this cliche right, a slobber knocker. I don't know who said that first. I'm trying to think that was Keith Jackson. I'm trying to think. A good old slobber knocker. Here's my issue with the Titans. And I'm getting older. I'm turning 50 this year. A little bit of divulging something about me. I grew up with the defense wins championships. And as I've evolved in football, I don't think defenses win championships. I think they prevent you from winning a championship. A bad defense will prevent you from winning a defense. I think it's really difficult in the playoffs when you play good teams that you're required to score 30 points and win these big games and shootouts. I think that's difficult. I say all this to say that while I appreciate a running game and I appreciate a strong defense because, I come from Manchester, I come from Pittsburgh, I come from the 15233. I appreciate that. It ain't going to be enough against the Ravens because I don't think that Ryan Tannehill on the road can score enough points to beat that Ravens team. That Ravens offense is multiple and dynamic. If they get up on the Titans, it's an absolute blowout. Now, you do have your exceptions, as Ariel 75 pointed out. How do you explain the 2000 Ravens? Well, they scored points on defense, and, that's an anomaly. That's not a recipe to win. What did the 2001 Ravens do? Defense fell off. They lost. They didn't win for years. Your margin of victory when you're depending on a dominant defense to win is minuscule. It's about as short as a leprechaun. So I think that if the Ravens can get out on a lead on them and limit Derrick Henry, I don't think the Titans have any shot. I don't trust Ryan Tannehill to go on the road and win that game. I think Lamar Jackson and that Ravens team, and Lamar Jackson is going to be the MVP. I think they're going to absolutely beat up the Titans. Let me jump into a point by Haas H. Big up to Chris Lott. Thank you. 100%, agree 100%, Lance. I actually with you totally. I believe just having a good situational defense, you can win a Lombardi. You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. Haas H is absolutely right. If your defense is good on third down and good in the red zone and gets turnovers, you'll win. I mean, look at the Indianapolis Colts team that beat Chicago. They were absolutely terrible against the run. I believe there was a game against Jacksonville. They gave up about 320 yards, but they tightened it up over the playoffs, played situational defense, and won a Super Bowl. It's situational defense. You can't. Michael O'Malley, easy on the leprechaun. Excuse me. I don't want to assume, Mike, but I'm going to guess, Mike, that you're Irish. My mom was born on St. Patrick's Day, so I'm partial to the green. Let's just say, big up the moms if you listen to the program. Yes, I got a St. Patty's Day mom, hence green is my favorite color. St. Patty's Day has always been big in my household. Let's go to the NFC side. Packers, Seahawks. I don't believe in the Green Bay Packers. The Green Bay Packers did not beat good teams this year. I think Aaron Rodgers is not, and that's a Cal guy. I'm a Cal guy. And big up to Aaron Rodgers for finally acknowledging the California Golden Bears. Big up to him for finally acknowledging them. I just don't think they have enough. I was tough on Russell Wilson. I thought Russell Wilson was a game manager. That's not a bad thing, but I thought he was just a game manager. Russell Wilson is much better than that. And I think Russell Wilson is the better quarterback in this game. Seattle is road tested. I think they go up to Lambeau and beat up the Packers. I think it's a tight game, but if you're a Packer fan and Russell Wilson has the football late in the game, you done. You're going to lose. Russ got big hands. Russ can cut the wind. Got a power arm, a howitzer for an arm. He makes plays, extends plays. I just love I like that Seahawks team. And they're going to be physical and run the football as well. I think they beat up the Packers and win that game. And of course, I got to pick the 49ers. My wife is a 49er fan. She is a member of the faithful, #the faithful. So secretly, I'm rooting for my wife's team to win a Super Bowl so we can both have 6 Super Bowls. So we can share the 6 Super Bowl love. I can have my 6 on the AFC side. She can have her 6 championships on the NFC side. I like KC over the Vikings. I don't like Kirk Cousins to continue the hot streak. Thielen being kind of banged up, Diggs being kind of banged up. I think they get after Delvin Cook in the run game. I think they really limit them, and I think they get after that Vikings offensive line. I think they really can get after them and beat them up. They got beat up severely by the Green Bay Packers towards the end of the year. Zacharias, I think it's Zacharias Smith or Zacharias White. And so they really beat them up. And I think the Niners front can dominate this game. So I like the favorites. Excuse me. I like three of the favorites. I like the Ravens. I like the Chiefs. I like the Hawks. And I like the Vikings. Let me jump into a couple of comments in here. And Michael Malley said he is Irish American. Big up to you, Mike. Young and Wood Burning said, I appreciate your picks, Yinzer. I just think the Texans are going to get important injury on the D side, and Mahomes passes zing-zanging easily. He's just a quality leader and a huge drive. I didn't pick that game. I picked the Chiefs. I like Mahomes. I think Mahomes and the Chiefs, I think that offense is really dynamic, and I don't like the way that Deshaun Watson played against the Bills. It's tough to win up in Arrowhead. Outside in those elements, I think they really get after the Texans, and I think they avenge their regular season loss. So again, I like Ravens, Chiefs, and I like the Seahawks and the 49ers. And I'm not going to tease my Super Bowl pick. I'll give that to you guys next week. But I want to thank you guys for jumping on with me late. We got some people in the live chat, only about 55 people, but it's late. It's almost 11 o'clock on the West Coast. Good Lord knows it's probably about 2 a.m. in the morning, but you will get this show tomorrow. If you're on the East Coast, you'll check it out. Hopefully you got your notifications on. Make sure you like and subscribe to the program. Give us some likes. Thank you for the super chat. We got the algorithm. Thank you guys for getting us over 5,000. We want to get to 6,000. I want to get to 6,000 by the Super Bowl. Jeff and those guys are a little more conservative with it, but I think you guys can get us to 6K before the Super Bowl, and that's in the next couple of weeks. Young and Wood Burning, 12:55 a.m. here. Yeah, thank you, man. Thank you guys for joining me on a late night. Again, I'm doing the waltz stuff this weekend, presenting my daughter to society. We're doing the cotillion. Your boy's going to have a tux on, gloves and tails, and I'm going to be doing my thing. We're going to present her to society. So that's a nice rite of passage for her. My family is super proud, so we get to present her. It's going to be great. It's going to be awesome. Maybe I'll post some pictures. Kathy Fareed, new BTS show, Breakfast with Lance. Hey, I love it. Brunch with Big Swab. That's what it should be called. Brunch with Big Swab. But with that, we're going to conclude the program. Big up to you, Leonard Green. Thanks for the nice thoughts. And with that, as always, tune in, tell a friend, and subscribe.